Guys, or should I say guy, Alex, we're back.
We are back. Just the two of
Yes.
us.
There's no Adamo today, but he'll be on the next episode. I'm Daniel. As always, he's Alex. And
I'm still here.
yeah, thanks to all the listeners for on this next episode.
That was
We
a
have some
great
breaking
intro.
news.
We do have breaking news. Would you like to start with the breaking news?
All right.
Go-
Favorite of the show,
yeah.
general manager of the Pittsburgh Penguins, Jim Rutherford, steps down for personal reasons. This
Yeah.
happened, 40 minutes ago?
Not even. Maybe. Let me pull it up here. Yeah, he for personal reasons, as they said. I think LeBron confirmed that it wasn't health reasons, so that's always a good sign. We
Mhm.
don't like when people have to step down for health reasons. That's obviously unfortunate. There's so much. It's the Pittsburgh Penguins have been through a lot recently.
Mhm.
You know, especially this last off season, he did, or even like, let's say February of 2020, just before the trade deadline. We'll start with Jason Zucker, for example. Like from that point on, and then getting beat by the Canadians, and then reworking your team, like kind of recreating your team in a way in the summer, trading for Mike Matheson, etc. And now we're at this point. I guess I should be clear. I'm not saying Jim Rutherford built this team and left. It's just this team has been through a heck of a lot lately.
Yeah, it's been a big thing. I've been seeing on Twitter where a lot of people are commenting on these posts about, look at two things. That there's the 16-17 Cup wins that, those were amazing teams that he built. That,
Right.
He kind of did go all in on a lot of these trades. He won a lot of them. Sometimes I forget, like, he got, Justin Schultz for like a third round pick who fit perfectly onto that team. Or, he would balance out Murray and Marc-Andre Fleury. But it's like what you said, the last few years, it's just been, okay, like, what are you kind of doing now? You're tinkering a bit too much. And like, for me, what I'm going to remember from this is just the asset management we spoke about. And the two things that really come to mind with me is that Derek Brassard trade, where it didn't really hurt them too much, but it bit a lot into their prospect pool with the draft picks, with Philip Gustafson. And then Brassard was kind of like traded away with draft picks also for Nick Bustad and Jared McCann.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think, his last few years, couple of years in Pittsburgh were, I don't want to say downhill, because I think the expectation was really high. Like, you go from winning 2 cups in a row and then what, right? Like last year, they're out in the first round against Montreal. The year before that, they're swept by the New York Islanders. So the last couple of years have been not very good for this team. And I think it gets to a point where it's like, you want to say his reputation has been damaged a little bit, I think, with these last 2 years. But I think the important thing to remember is he won this team, and you're right, he helped build this team. Those 2 teams, he won 2 cups in a row. Like, that's rarely ever done. And the fact that it was in the modern salary cap era, I think is incredible.
Yeah. And I think that's a big thing that everyone kind of forgets, where, we talk about the 97, 98 Red Wings, that was when they had literally a Hall of Fame team before the cap. And
Right.
When I look at Pittsburgh, I think maybe for all the trades, all the moves he's kind of done, I think there's a bit of a silver lining he leaves there. Like, yeah, you have arguably one of the best players in the world with Crosby, and then also with Malkin, and then Chris Letang, and then they have like a lot of pieces there. But I think the silver lining that I look at are those young pieces that he managed to keep, during these wholesales. I think about Samuel Poulin, who's like a solid power forward, Pierre-Olivier Joseph, and especially John Marino. Like, I did not see that coming. I think that that was a bit of a saving grace for Jim Rutherford the last few years. Like getting John Marino from Edmonton for literally nothing has to be probably one of the best moves he did in the last year or two.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely, my God, absolutely right. But I think the thing with this team now is, what is it going to be like moving forward? Now, obviously, for now, it's going to be assistant GM Patrick Alvin, who I believe is the first Swedish. Is he Swedish? Alvin. I believe he's the first Swedish
Wow.
GM.
Second European, right after Jarkko Kekalainen.
Yeah. And they said they're going to start the search right away. They're going to look internally, which I'm guessing is Patrick Alvin, and also externally. And there's a couple interesting names. And I hate to have to bring these names up. Except one of them, Mike Fuda, who obviously is now at Sportsnet. There were rumblings, something about him going to Vancouver. Could he potentially, not as a general manager, I don't think, but could he fit in Pittsburgh? Now we know he's really good at scouting.
Mm-hmm.
And what does this team lack?
A lot of
prospects.
Yeah,
right.
That's a very interesting thing, because I think the way the Pittsburgh Penguins have been set up now is it was a bit of a big hit, because I think for so long we thought about Jim Rutherford and what is his vision for the team, and he's always talked about it before in press conferences about, he wants to see what he can do when you have, Sidney Crosby on your team. And a lot on Twitter has been about, like, where does this go now? And a lot of sports journalists have confirmed that the Penguins are still in a win now situation. But it's still interesting to me that like if Mike Fuda were to come in, I think that'd be great, because he'd maximize a lot of those later picks that I really think that at this point the Penguins are probably going to have to think about, because you're not going to hit on that first round pick. Well, they don't have a first round pick this year. So in later years, I don't think they're still going to be, at worst, a middle of a pack team. Like I can't see a team like Pittsburgh wanting to go into a full rebuild knowing they still have Malkin and Crosby.
Right. When I think of Pittsburgh, the another team that comes to mind in the way they can do things is, look at what Montreal did. Now, I feel like Montreal was in a little bit of a different situation, because they actually had prospects already kind of there who we kind of had an idea was going to be good. Now, the advantage of bringing someone like Mike Fuda in would be that you're going to get those even you're not necessarily going to have those prospects by the time they're ready. Crosby and Malkin probably won't be necessarily in the league, just because how the Crosby and Malkin are on the back end of their career. And especially with those later round picks, like you brought up, that's not going to be something that's going to take a year or two. Like those guys are probably going to be longer term projects until this team bottoms out.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the Penguins have to decide what route they want to go down, because they can go down Montreal's route and say, we're going to retool. And if there's a year to retool, it would have necessarily been this year. You have no fans in the stands. You don't have to worry about attendance and all that. I don't necessarily think that's the route they're going to end up going down. I think they're just going to keep packing on guys. Like, you look at what Rutherford did this summer, trading Hornquist for Matheson. Don't really understand. Bringing in Kasperi Kapanen, bringing in all these guys who are just kind of going to slot into your roster, including Cody Ceci. And what is it? Like you get and you trade Matt Murray. Like what is it? What's going on?
It looks like a lot of, like, not to say these are bad players per se, but looks like stopgaps in a way that, you try to mitigate what you'd give hypothetically a young player, where these guys are solid vets that they could slot in, they could give you the minutes, but they're not exactly going to elevate you to another level that we've seen previously with this team.
Right. There's two names. Well, there's one name. I'm throwing in another name as well, but he was rumored to the Penguins. If this happens, I don't know what to say, because I think it wouldn't be very good. Dale Talon. Now he had the supposed incident, which got, I guess, cleared per the NHL. But as soon as that was cleared, it was rumored that Dale Talon might join Jim Rutherford in Pittsburgh. If that's still an option, I don't know what this team is going to be like in 5 years.
Yeah, because when I think about Dale Talon, I think he's one of those GMs that has really gone through it all. I think that he helped to build the Chicago Blackhawks, and he didn't necessarily lead them to the Cups because that was Stan Bowman, but he's been at that level where they could see that, okay, we could get to a championship caliber team. Then he goes to the Florida Panthers, where he completely has to kind of start from the bottom, and it'd be an interesting thing. I know that they've had those problems with him in the past with these, there's still allegations at this point, but again, it's a guy that I guess part of the old boys club, I guess at this time, that it's another option they could think about. I actually, before we move on, I actually had one random idea about it because I know Lou Lamoriello was never a full-time owner, but he was always like a minority stake owner of teams that he's been part of, except for the Maple Leafs. And I was just thinking, like, Mario Lemieux just like comes out and says, like, I'm gonna be the GM of this team, and then I'll be the coach of this team if something like doesn't look right with me.
That would be
the bridging of eras. I think
that would be very, very interesting.
Yeah,
because I don't know how that would work out. Like, I mean, we're talking about one of the greatest players ever, and we saw Gretzky coach.
Mm-hmm.
That
and for Adam,
go very well.
And for Adam, Patrick Waugh coached.
Yeah, he did.
He won a Jack Adams.
He did. He won. Yeah, right. So, but that'd be interesting. Anything else you have to say on the breaking news?
Jim Rutherford, for all the things we've said, they haven't been bad things. It's just we're just looking at it at a critical lens. We wish you the best. Hope everything is okay, and we'll remember the highs more than the lows. At least me. I don't know about you, Adam.
I will too, even though no, you know what? I'm gonna remember the highs because he traded Phil Kessel, which got us Frederick Anderson as the Kasperi Kapanen for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
Then he traded for Kasperi Kapanen, and we got Rodion Amirov and Philip Hollander. So I'm not gonna complain, okay? I don't agree. Like, I think it's insane that you trade for Mike Matheson and sign Cody Ceci, but that's a separate issue.
Yeah, that's something that we'll overlook, at least for this episode.
Yeah.
All right, next piece of news. Vince Dunn.
Ooh, that's
is he out of St. Louis?
Well, I mean, Friedman wrote about it in 31 Thoughts, and Saravelli obviously reported that a trade isn't inevitable, but there is interest in him, and there's been interest in him for a while, even before he signed his 1-year extension. Now, apparently, St. Louis is looking for a first rounder. I don't know if that's that. My first impression was that's a steep price.
Yeah,
but
there's no term there whatsoever.
Right.
I don't know. This is kind of an interesting thing to me because I guess for me personally, I always thought Vince Dunn was part of the long-term look of this team. And I don't know what's going on with contract negotiations, but it's a bit of a young guy on that back end that it's someone that I guess like they could afford to lose, but at the same time, like it doesn't look as formidable taking him out.
Yeah, Dunn, it's such a weird situation in St. Louis in my eyes, or in my opinion, because like obviously he hasn't necessarily had that great a start. Craig Berube called him out after their 6-3 loss against the Kings and ended up being a healthy scratch, I think, last night against Las Vegas. You're fighting for a spot because what happened is, right, they signed Torrey Krug, they've signed extend Marco Scandella at $3.25 million, and what, now you just have Vince Dunn as your third left defenseman. But no, he's fighting for a position against Carl Gunnarsson, Leafs legend Carl Gunnarsson, and Robert Bertuzzo, and I guess in a way Marco Scandella for that top four spot. That's tough. That is a tough one. And he was taken off the power play and then eventually scratched. Now I know there's teams interested, but for a first round pick,
that's pretty high. And yeah, again, what you said, like St. Louis, what they kind of have been doing with Vince Dunn is not exactly shoring up his market value in a way. I actually kind of feel bad because I had this prediction about the Blues in our season preview that, things were not going to gel together the same way they thought they would. And I'm actually feeling bad that it actually is happening to that. It's getting to that point, but it's actually, I thought this would happen like mid-season, not at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, it's weird. Like they are, let me just pull up the standings here. It's not been an awful start. They're 4-2-1 in 7 games. It just feels like, they're -5, by the way, and they're second in the division. So that's a tough one. That's a tough one to look at. That really is a tough one to look at. He's also the second potential left defenseman on the block now, with Victor Mete.
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, are there what teams do you think could be interested in Vince Dunn?
I think a lot of teams. We mentioned them before, the Boston Bruins. But I don't know. It's just like, it's so weird to me when I think about the Bruins of last year when they spent the first round pick to get Andre Kasha, and the Boston Bruins that we have this year, that I think they're a bit more cautious now, where there's really no guarantee with the way their roster is built up that they're going to make the playoffs. So I don't know like what they would give up, because again, this is a Bruins team that has been questionable with their picks the last few years of who are they actually selecting. That even if you have like a first or a second round pick kind of guy, it's like, okay, did you reach for this guy? Is he really developing the same way you expected him to be? Who's not named Jack Studnicka?
Right. Boston was number one on my list as well. Another team who needs defensemen is Winnipeg. Just to shore, like, and I know Vince Dunn maybe isn't the best defensively, but I feel like the one thing that they didn't necessarily fully address in the offseason was their defense.
Mm-hmm.
And just to plug Vince Dunn in there, I think there definitely would be an upgrade there, and he could be a guy you could have moving forward on the power play as well. Now, again, like I'm thinking we're 7 games into the year for most teams, I think, with the exception of like Calgary, and then those group of teams in the East who some have played 3 or 4 games. What team is giving up a first round pick right now?
Yeah, I
That
can't imagine that. I actually had a second option about who would actually be able to use Vince Dunn. And
Who's
it's a
that?
team that's really pressed against the cap, and it's the New York Islanders. Because they lost Devon Taves, and then they lost Johnny Boychuk, who wasn't really playing too much anymore. And then they
Right.
don't trust Thomas Hickey anymore, who's on the taxi
Yeah.
squad. So there's been a lot of movement there on their back end that's someone I think Lamoriello could bring in. I just kind of can't think of anything they would really want to give up. Like, I don't think they're going to give up a first. I don't think they're going to give up like Oliver Wahlstrom. Um, like all I can think of is like Josh Hosang and a sweetener for them because I'm like St. Louis could do something on that wing side, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that's what this is going to come down to because Vince Dunn has the potential to be a really good defenseman. Like he's only 24 years old. But right now, what team is giving up a first round pick for an RFA who's going to be an RFA at the end of the year? Like, I think there's a difference between a trade involving Vince Dunn and a trade involving, let's say, Patrick Laine. Like, Vince Dunn is good, but like Patrick Laine, I think, is a couple steps up there. Like, that guy will score 30 goals in his sleep if he wanted to.
Yeah. It's just there's a lot of unknowns with this. It's pretty funny. It's ironic that Jack Roslovic went to Columbus. He would have been actually a nice piece going to St. Louis for Vince Dunn, swapping out
Yeah.
the potential RFAs. I know he signed that extension with Columbus. Maybe in his heart, he always wanted to go back to Columbus. So we don't know. Maybe that was that. But
Yeah.
we'll keep looking at that Vince Dunn situation. And honestly, I'm still kind of surprised right now on St. Louis putting him on the block. But we wish him the best as well.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess moving on, we'll look at the Chicago Blackhawks. And what was already a thin team has got even thinner.
Yeah.
Adam Boquist, Alex DeBrincat are both on quarantine protocol.
That is not a good sign for the Chicago Blackhawks. Like you were saying, Taze was out. I think Alex Nylander, to be clear, had needed surgery. Kirby Dox needed surgery after his injury at the World Juniors. Now you're adding Adam Boquist, who's an up-and-coming defenseman, maybe not necessarily at the moment their most important defenseman, and Alex DeBrincat, who, let's be honest, he's probably their second best player at the moment behind Patrick Kane.
Yeah, these were guys that, as things kept getting thinner and thinner for the Blackhawks, these are guys that I thought they would elevate their game and I guess hold the fort in a way, but it's another unfortunate thing for the Blackhawks this year that they missed out on Kirby Dach, Jonathan Taves, like you said, and then even further, everything's depleted now. Like I know there were jokes on Twitter about expected lines for the Blackhawks, and then you see Patrick Kane's name on the forward line, like on every line. And I don't know what they're going to be able to do this year. I know that they've committed to kind of a tentative rebuild, no matter what Jonathan Taves says, but I think this is going to be an even uglier season for them if these things keep coming up, that you still have those issues in goaltending and you still have Duncan Keith at 37 playing the most minutes on your back end.
Yeah, it's not going to be an easy season for this team at all. And whether it's, listen, like they should have done this a couple of years ago in terms of the rebuild. I understand why they didn't, because they thought it was really going to screw up the fan base. But now you're here. You have no one in the stands. Don't worry about the fans. Don't worry about the fans. And that's like, you don't have to worry about filling the seats. And I think that's what the main issue was. going to pay money to go watch this team do nothing on the ice is very different than sitting on your couch at home and watching the game. It's going to be tough, like no doubt about it. Trust me. Like if there's people who understand, I think a lot of, like, all three of us understand going through horrible seasons. Leafs 5 or 6 years ago, Montreal have had their issues. Anaheim, like you'll get through it. If I had to say something to Blackhawk fans, it's you'll get through it, I think.
I think for me, the biggest fear for them is, and I know it's been 3 years since they made the playoffs, but I think it's just a culture of winning that you associate certain faces with how this team is expected to be. And, I think there's nothing to fear in a way, because Chicago, and from what I've seen the last few years, they've really hit on their draft picks, that they've really been able to kind of build up a lot more in their system. I think like one thing's maybe lacking is, a goalie of the future, in my opinion. But I think that if you were to take the two teams this season, the Penguins or the Blackhawks, I think if you really were to go for the full scale rebuild, I think the Blackhawks would be okay, at least from what I can see in the next few years, with what talent that's ready to kind of actually put out there. Like they're not going to win a lot, but it's going to be like Ottawa maybe.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like starting with, you already have two, and you can argue three with Duncan Keith, building blocks in Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews. Like these are your leaders. These are the guys you're kind of rebuilding around in a way. Plus, you already have some young pieces already in there. At this point, it's developing more young pieces to slot into your lineup. And I think Chicago's is built in a way where, hey, they do have pieces there in the system who haven't played yet. And, let's remember, like, they're not going to do well this season. You're going to get another high pick. Like if they, like it's supposed to be that a defensive heavy draft, and maybe, losing Duncan Keith in the next couple of years, you already have Adam Bachfist, a guy like Ian Mitchell. That if you get a guy like, let's say, Owen Power, like that's excellent a guy, excellent name. That's a guy you can slot in there, and with the help of Duncan Keith, become whether it's the next Duncan Keith or the next whoever, be that next defenseman in Chicago.
I think that's probably what they're going to be aiming for. Quite honestly, like in terms of like the contracts too, like I think that the Kings are in a worse situation with this, and they've been able to make it work with getting more draft picks, with kind of bottoming out. So we'll see how that goes. Well, I guess, go on.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, like, I think what the Kings did well, and maybe the I don't know how, like, the opportunity the Blackhawks have to do this, because do they have it? Do they have the players to do this? But the Kings, look at what the Kings did over the last couple of years, trading Jake Muzzin, trading Tyler Toffoli, trading Alec Martinez, like trading the guys who aren't necessarily part of your future in a way. And they're not Drew Doughty or Anze Kopitar, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And they got value back for that. They got a first which turned out to be Tobias Bjornfoot, Grunstrom and Sean Dursey for Muzzin. They got 2 seconds for Alec Martinez. They got a prospect and a pick for Tyler Toffoli. But it doesn't seem like, do the Blackhawks have that though? Do they have pieces they can trade?
Yeah, because I'm looking at it now, and they have Nikita Zadorov, where that was still a bit of a random trade. I think that they could have just taken Saad and, let him play lights out and trade him for prospects, trade him to get something back. And I think they really had that bit of a misstep there where they lost a bit of value there. I didn't know why they got another defenseman like Zadorov, where, I love the size he gives. I love the grit he gives, but at the same time, it's like one of those players where it's not a really hot commodity in today's NHL, that type of defenseman.
Right.
Um, yeah, like you're kind of right. Like it's interesting to see because like sometimes I'll say that like, and I've said it before on the show where I've always thought Dylan Strome just needed the time, he needed the mentorship to get better, and he did show that to me the first time he like his first year there. But it's just been a bit of an up and down, and the inconsistency is there. Like, don't get me wrong, he's a lot better than he was on the Coyotes. It's just I guess it's time to stop looking at like the fact that he was third overall.
If there's a time for Dylan Strome to shine, I would say it's now.
Yeah.
You don't have Kirby Doc, you don't have Jonathan Toews. Like, if there's three centers I can imagine being the near future for this team, I'd argue it's those three guys. But two of them are not there. So let's go. Like, prove why you not deserve to stay there, but like, why are you that third overall pick? And it's not like he doesn't have the skill.
Yeah, I completely agree. From one team that doesn't really know what they're doing right now with the Blackhawks, we'll move on to another one where that just did a major move that we're still unsure how that's going to go. The Columbus Blue Jackets.
Yeah, it's such a tricky thing. We had a full out discussion about the trade last episode, which if you haven't listened to, why don't you go listen to it? I even apologize to Josh Archibald. Now, the things we've talked about in the past, and I don't remember, I don't know if you remember this discussion. We had a discussion about playing Line on the first line, and someone left a comment on the YouTube page. I don't remember who it was. I'm sorry. But basically saying, it's kind of a system in Winnipeg where it's like there's Wheeler, Scheifele, Maurice. It's a really tight group, and it's like he made it out to seem like Wheeler runs everything. Whether that's true or not, we don't really know. It's kind of believable because I still don't understand. I'll never understand why Patrick Laine didn't have more time on the first line. I don't know about you. It's insane to me that this has been a discussion for how many years. Now, I have a rumor that I have found from the Finnish publication Ida Lehti. I hope I am pronouncing that right. Citing inside sources claim that Laine was mistreated by some of his teammates and the bullying was nonstop. The quote is, Patrick Laine was mistreated by forwards Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler, and Paul Maurice was, quote, too weak to defy them.
Wow. That's big.
That is a lot. Now, it says the publication states that Wheeler felt his position on the right side of the top line was threatened because Laine was originally a right winger.
But it's a big thing I'm also looking at too. Two things I get from this. Number one, don't you want to maximize your offense to win? Second, Blake Wheeler's 34. Patrick Laine's 23. Like, the way I kind of see it, like, and know, these are all allegations, but it's just the kind of thing where, he's a veteran guy, Blake Wheeler. He's the captain, and like, you could, like, in a way, advocate for the fact that, do what's best for the team, because the Jets, I really believe they had it in 2018. Like, they had quite the team, and to kind of see it kind of go how it is now, where they're still a really good team, but I feel that there's so many things here that things have kind of fizzled out. And when you have, that loss of that defensive core, you lose out on a lot of the other guys because of cap restrictions. Like, they had to sell Yoel Armia basically to the Canadians. Wouldn't you want to do your best to see with what you have, not go like, let's just keep things as they are?
Yeah, And like the thing is, I look at Winnipeg and I fully agree. I think Patrick Laine should have been on that first line, and and it would have been better. Like Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Patrick Laine. I think that would have been a deadly line, a deadly line. And then you still have on your second line Nikolai Ehlers, who's a damn good player, um, Paul Stastny, and Blake Wheeler.
That's not bad.
That's not a bad top six, but I think like you could say, well, how about you spread out the talent? Yeah, I promise you, put Patrick Laine with Mark Scheifele and move Blake Wheeler to the second line. I think it's better for the team than having the opposite. Yeah. And obviously, when Wheeler was asked by Jason Bell, who's a hockey writer at the Winnipeg Free Press, asked him if he accepts any responsibility for how things played out with Patrick Laine not being happy with the situation in Winnipeg and wanting a trade. Now, obviously, Wheeler said he does take some responsibility. He said he thought that he coddled, that's the word he used, coddled a teenager at the time when he was drafted. So obviously he's not going to admit to the things that the Finnish publication had said, because those are huge accusations. But if what they're saying is true, and it's not it's the first time I'm hearing of like the bullying and stuff like that. But if what they're saying is true in terms of, how it's a very difficult locker room in terms of, it's Scheifele, Wheeler, though, that's it. Those are your boy. Those are the big boys in the locker room. That's it. Then maybe there's a bigger problem in Winnipeg than we thought.
Yeah, because, and again, I'm not saying this is connected because we don't have the insight on any of this, but
no.
I just remember they were bullying allegations as well before Evander Kane was traded to the Buffalo Sabres, where if I recall, there was something about his clothes being put in the team showers or something.
Yeah. Yes.
So we don't know, because I know it's really different because it's different team systems, but the way I look at projected lineups and I look at this stuff, and sometimes a lot, even Steve Dangle said, don't take that as gospel, don't look at that as something that's going to be permanent for the game or even the whole season. And the way I think about it is I don't see John Tavares or Evgeny Malkin saying, hey, I should really be on the first line. Why am I always projected to be on the second line? Or, I'm not always the first line guy.
Yeah, you're right. And it's, I don't know why it would be an issue. I don't know what the locker room is like in Winnipeg, but I think you're exactly right. And something you said at the beginning, don't you want to win? Isn't the end goal to win? Are you not going to win more if you have Patrick Laine getting passes? Sorry, Blake Wheeler. You're right. He's 34. That contract is not very good. And maybe the last few years haven't been the greatest for him. Put Patrick Laine with a guy who can get him the puck, in a guy like Mark Scheifele, even Kyle Connor. We're having different discussions. We're having different discussions about Patrick Laine. Instead, it didn't go well, and they got a great player in Pierre-Luc Dubois. And in my opinion, I think he has a future in Winnipeg. I think there's different, his dad being the head assistant with Manitoba, somewhat of a bigger market than Columbus. And, he's actually to his left is Nikolai Ehlers, to his right is whoever. I think there's potential for that. It's just unfortunate that they couldn't keep that Patrick Laine in Winnipeg.
Yeah, because you know, and I'll say it here that, you know, you and I are not Toronto centralists where we don't think of like, oh, the Leafs and everything else. I think
I
we want,
sometimes think like that.
yeah,
I'm not gonna lie.
sometimes,
Not
not
gonna
all the
lie.
time,
Not
but
yeah.
I kind of feel that, you know, there was excitement that there were more competitive Canadian teams. And for me, I know it's just the way the contracts are, but I think Winnipeg in a way kind of squandered their window where, you know, they can completely prove me wrong this season, but I kind of feel that the last few years they've been really bleeding in terms of talent, and for this thing to kind of come up, it's just another thing because like Pierre-Luc Dubois is probably going to do really well there, and I really hope he does really well. But it's it's a kind of thing where it's like, what about the next time he needs an extension? What about the other guys coming up? How are you gonna kind of fit things around? You know, you have a better defensive core now, but you know, it's not exactly 2018 defensive core.
Right. Yeah. It feels like things have it feels like things have kind of gone downhill after Bufflin, Truba, and Myers all left at once. Right? They all left in the
Mm-hmm.
same year. Truba was traded. Myers left via free agency, and Bufflin obviously decided to retire as well. And from that point on, it just seems like story after story after story about Patrick Laine, about the locker room, about this, about that. So, something it's gonna get fixed hopefully somehow, because I think there is a lot of potential on that team. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
there's still guys who can still come up. The guy they literally drafted this year, Cole Perfetti, maybe not this year necessarily, but maybe a year or two from now. And again, that's another guy who can play next to Pierre-Luc Dubois now, or who could have played with Patrick
Yeah.
Laine if he had, if the relationship hadn't gotten muddy, I guess, let's say.
Yeah. I didn't get to say this last episode, but just one last thing I have for this is it's just funny to me because I know that it's how the player pans out. It's not how the original draft picks were. But it looked to me that Winnipeg traded their 2015 first that they got in the Evander Kane trade
Yeah.
to trade down to get Pierre-Luc Dubois with Jack, like by trading Jack Roslovic the next year. So it's a weird thing for me.
I thought it was really interesting. Kekalainen was talking about saying he tried to move up to get that second overall pick to draft Laine, obviously, and how different things would have been if
Yeah.
that had happened. Would Pierre Luc would probably he would Pierre Luc Dubois still have gone third? Would have
Would
been
the
would have
talent in
been yeah.
Columbus stayed? Because Dubois took a bit of time. He took
He
a lot
did. He
longer
he
than Line.
he did. I think last year was really a breakout season for him, and then the playoffs, it went right to the moon for him.
Yeah, and we felt it in Toronto, but that's okay.
Unfortunately, we felt it in Toronto. Yeah. You're right. You're right. Thanks for the reminder.
All right. I guess next piece of news, and it's been a big one that you and I have been kind of trying to decipher or understand a lot of the facts going on because this is all speculation at this point. But Barstool and the NWHL.
Yeah, I've been. I mean, you said you had been reading about it, so maybe if you wanted to start by giving some type of explanation about what has happened.
Yeah, so for sure, like I know that the NWHL they've started their season like Placid, I believe that's it's called, and they're in a bit of a bubble right now, and you know it's been a big thing that women's hockey at the professional level is back, that it's garnering a lot more attention. I remember, I believe they had more than 80,000 viewers on a Twitch channel watching these games. So that's amazing to hear,
Yeah.
especially based on what happened with the Canadian Women's Hockey League last season. And a lot is going on, and you know there's been a lot of things with this momentum of things. And one thing in particular is Barstool with their CEO Erica Nardini, that she came out and said she wanted to buy a team. She wanted to buy a team here. She wanted to sponsor it, but there's been a lot of backlash lately, and she had that bit of a video that people are kind of thinking, what does this mean for these like sports journalists that in a way they're kind of getting targeted based on what they've said from a lot of Barstool loyalists, and they've kind of called out Barstool for what they viewed as like misogynistic, racist like comments that have been on the show, on the network, really. Because one example was what you said, Splitting Chicklets. That's always one of the number one shows when it comes to podcasts.
Yeah.
What's your initial, I guess, reaction to this, Alex?
We were talking about this before we started recording too. It's such a dicey situation, because you say one wrong thing and you're just gonna get what's the word I used? They kind of get like jumped on for saying the wrong thing. I think the way it was handled, I don't necessarily agree with how it was handled from her standpoint in calling out. Like, I don't agree with either side. Like, I think, listen, Barstool, yes, has had some, has had a not great past, with obviously all the things, like the countless things that have happened in the past. And I don't necessarily agree with the way she handled it with making that video. It's not, I would not have handled it that way. Let me put it at that. I wouldn't have handled it that way. And at that point, as soon as that video was sent out, like this, you kind of just knew it was gonna take it next level. And I think right now, and I watched and the broadcast was really good. I watched the NWHL broadcast on Twitch. I think right now women's hockey seems to be at this really not weird, interesting point, because you have the NWHL and you have the PWHPA, and whether they say it or not, and it seems that they say they're not, but they're kind of butting heads in a way. And I feel like we're kind of at a point where people are picking sides. But at the end of the day, I think the end goal needs to be is that you have to come together to do this. And I think that would end up being the best way. Now, I mean, listen, it might take a couple of years for that to happen. And if it takes a couple of years, it takes a couple of years. At the end of the day, I'm still going to be watching hockey no matter what, men's, women's, whatever, like whoever. But this situation with Barstool is very, very tricky, because I don't think the way that anyone has handled it is necessarily the best.
Yeah. This is according to USA Today, but just hours after Nardini's video went up, Metropolitan Riveters player Soroya Taker, who's actually one of the very few black players right now in the NWHL, she was credited as being one of the first people to really push back against that false narrative, like what they view as the false narrative. And she says, and quote, that we as a league do not want to support any openly racist platform, point blank, period. If you as the CEO cannot recognize your platform promotes that of white supremacy and only further divides the athletic community, perhaps we need to have a conversation. Please keep your money. So it's pretty heavy stuff there. And it's kind of like a weird thing to me too. Like, not a weird thing, but it's just something that I'd like to get more information about, if I'm going to reword that carefully, because what we talked about previously, Kelly Babstock, who has spoken with Erica Nardini in the past, is probably one of the biggest like stars right now in women's hockey, that there's already been like that connection with things. It's just it's like an odd thing to kind of maneuver around because like on one side, like we've talked about, like, there's that controversy with Barstool that they kind of have these like loyalists in a way that they're gonna support the brand no matter what. And
Yeah.
you know, at the same time, you also want more growth, not like, in women's hockey, especially like in hockey as a whole, but like women's hockey especially. And it's hard to kind of really like say like, because in no way I'm not taking any sides or anything. It's just something to really kind of navigate.
Yeah. I think you put it really well. Um, like you want growth in hockey, but what type of growth I get? Like what type of growth do you want?
Mm.
And I think that's the question that's being answered in a way at the moment.
Because there is that understanding that there are a lot of those other players, like the ones in the past too, like who have been of color, like Blake Bolden, who was a star in women's hockey, and Julie Chen as well. But it is something to kind of like really do think about, because there are people that, and this is not our words, there are people that have been commenting a lot in defense of Barstool in a way where they've said things, and it's what a lot of people have also kind of responded to as well. Like, not getting too lost in those Twitter threads, but there's things where they say like, listen, it's a pandemic, like, and you're going against expansion and sponsorship during a pandemic for a sport. Like, it's something where it's like you should be appreciative of this expansion and of this attention that even in certain circumstances hockey would not really get. But again, that flip of the coin too, where it's like, are you going to be supported from a brand that a lot of players have spoken out against?
Yeah, I think you put it best.
That's another thing too, where it's a huge story. It's going to keep going on Twitter. For
Yeah.
any listeners here, it's something that we really do encourage you to look at the video, look at, I guess, at the comments, look at what the other players have said on their social media platforms, and we'll keep you posted as this thing goes on.
Yeah, for sure.
Second piece of news, a bit of a controversial one too. John Chaika,
Oh,
former Arizona Coyotes GM, is suspended from any NHL activity until December 31st, 2021.
and that's
Yeah.
for the contract dispute, not
Yes.
the scouting scandal.
Yeah, which he may have another thing on that later on. We don't know.
This is a tough one, and I feel like this one isn't over as well. Obviously, because there's the New Jersey Devils part in this, which I think we've kind of, which has kind of been just glanced over. I don't think it's been looked at in detail, and I think Friedman brought it up on 31 Thoughts that next is what part did New Jersey play in this? Because we look back at, and his example was Mike Keenan back in 94. I want to say the year was 1994, where he was the coach of the Rangers, and before the playoffs ended, there was rumors that was about to go coach. I believe it was Detroit. He ended up going to St. Louis, but the teams ended up getting fined for that. So now the next part is what's next for New Jersey.
Yeah, because that's a big part of, I guess, this case that we haven't heard from. That we knew it was going to be. They said a Hudson River team was trying to poach him, and we kind of knew it was a New Jersey Devil, especially with how they were with a GM search. But the one thing I kind of think about, it's just unfortunate in a way, and we've talked about the Coyotes a lot, about a lot of the mismanagement, a lot of the things where there was that hope, and they kind of thought in themselves that they had what it took to kind of make these moves for Phil Kessel and Taylor Hall, and it kind of seemed like everything kind of just blew up.
Yeah, it's his plan didn't work out What you know what I feel like happened in Arizona is he kept doubling down on his plan, and I think maybe that's where he went wrong. He
Hmm.
thought his team was ready. He thought he had the prospects. Unfortunately, he didn't. And I saw a lot of people talking about this because him, and especially him along with Dubas was supposed to be this next wave of GMs, and they were going to be more analytical. But I think what Dubas did differently than John Chaika is I think Dubas seemed to change his plan a bit. And you look at what he did this offseason, bringing in Simmons and Bogosian, like that's that toughness. They can still play. Simmons has 2 goals. Bogosian hasn't been that bad. And I think, listen, the bar's low for that third pairing defenseman. It's been Cody Ceci and, those guys in the past. But he's brought in guys who work and have that extra element. And plus Joe Thornton, right? So maybe he dug himself into a hole in Arizona, and that's really unfortunate. But I guess we'll see what happens. He won't be involved in hockey for 11 months, I guess, almost, because it's the end of January.
Yeah, and again, it's like what we said, like that foundation he tried to build. A lot of excitement early on, where we saw the Clayton Keller, we saw the Jacob Chikrin, and honestly, the steals that were trades that ended up being Darcy Kemper and T. Rotna. And, we haven't seen the fruit of that. And it's just, we're going to see how things go, because he has that other thing going on where he's lost that Coyotes quite a bit of draft picks and money. So this will not go away. This is something that we're going to for sure circle back to. But moving on to the two teams, we'll look at the Leafs now. And I guess, we'll talk about first, I guess, if you want to talk about the goaltending, Alex, how do you feel about that?
This is a rough one. The Simpsons meme where the guy gets kicked out of the bar and he's just behind him. And that's Michael Hutchinson for this team. Obviously he was, he traded to Colorado? I think he was part of the Cali Rosen deal.
Yeah.
And then they signed him at the end of the year for 2 more years. Obviously, I think it was obviously a 2-way deal. I feel like the most Toronto thing ever just happened to them. They had to give up Aaron Dell for cap reasons and roster spot reasons. And not even like, we're 2 weeks into the season now. Now they need a good third string goalie. It's very unfortunate that this is the case. I don't know how much, Campbell's out. I think it said for a few weeks. There's not many. The next back-to-back for the team is February 18th, which is 3 weeks. I know Keefe recently obviously played Campbell on a non-back-to-back, which was like the craziest thing to ever happen in Toronto in a while. So maybe we actually might see Michael Hutchinson, but I have a slight feeling that we hopefully won't see Michael Hutchinson. Please.
I mean, the way I kind of see it is maybe I'm just going to be hopeful here, but he's been tested in the playoffs. He's been traded and he's back. So maybe he knows something.
Okay, you know what? I'll give you that point, and I will counter you with what I think Toronto's defense has vastly improved, and I do want to get into that. But he was playing behind Colorado's defense, which I think is a couple steps above Toronto's. Yeah. Right. And it's the same thing. I was having a conversation, I think with Mike, actually was in our group chat anyways. We're talking about Frederick Anderson. And I think obviously Freddie had an odd start the first few games, but I think there is a difference when you have when you have a better defense in front of him. He probably has the best defense, top 6 defensemen in front of him since his Anaheim days.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. Maybe things will be different with Michael Hutchinson because the Leafs aren't giving up 100 high danger chances a game. Like that is a possibility. But it took him like half a season last year to get a win.
And I know it's a shortened season. It's a really small schedule, but honestly, like I wouldn't mind if Frederick Anderson did play that many games. And the one thing I think about is, we don't. I know he's played a different style. He's more of a hybrid, but we don't see the goalies anymore. Like Martin Brodeur play like 77 games a season anymore, or I don't know if I'm going to be okay saying this, but we don't see an Andrew Raycroft in Toronto play like more than 70 games in a season.
Come on, why are you doing this to
me? It's just the latest example I got. I think Cujo also played that many games one year too.
I like that example.
Okay.
I don't mind Curtis Joseph. I don't.
But
yeah, sorry.
It's gonna be heavy load on Freddie. I think again what he said too, like he started out cold. Maybe he needs a bit of the volume. But again, yeah, like I'm surprised on how many injuries have already piled up for the Leafs.
Yeah, it's tough right now. It's Cam first. Like first it was Robertson, then the next game it was Thornton, and now it's Jack Campbell, and it's really taking it's taking a hit. And we've had this whole discussion. Toronto has all this depth now, and now it's being tested. It really is being tested. And obviously last night, we saw Joey Anderson and Travis Boyd make their Toronto Maple Leafs debut. I thought, obviously Travis Boyd got that goal. I think Boyd played. I think that fourth line really wasn't bad. Obviously, it wasn't the greatest thing in the world. No, it was. They had a decent first period. Last night's game was something else. It was kind of like start really well and then just
I guess it's our next point. And maybe it's connected to the Calgary series, but is this team still ruining your life?
Sometimes. Like it's like we're not allowed to have a rest night, a stress-free night where we can just sit back and watch the game. It's got to be either like the thing was, it's like even that Edmonton game I think we talked about last episode, which was so boring, which was so unleaf-like. It's like that's still a stressful night because like, man, just we know you can do it. We know you can put the puck in the net, and you're not. And the game is so close. And last night you're up 3-1, or were they up 3-0? I think at some point, and then it's 3-3. Why are you doing this? Why you gotta do this? Like they held the Calgary Flames to one shot in the first period, and they got outshot. Like I think it was about 23-6 the rest of the game.
They want to keep you on your heels.
Like they just want to give people just, I don't know what to describe it as. It's like, I hate it, but I love this team so much.
You just can't stop. You can't stop watching.
I can't. I'm not like Mike. I can stick with one team. I hope he's listening to this too.
Yeah, me too. I'm just loyal to the Leafs. But I guess like one point we could kind of go to that is Matthew Tkachuk enemy number one in Toronto now?
He'll be enemy number one the next time we play them. I've already forgotten about Matthew Tkachuk.
Yeah.
When
I first saw that, because I know they're best buddies from their cup winning days, but like, do you think Jake Muzzin thought of Drew Doughty when he flipped the puck to Matthew Tkachuk? Yes,
I think he might have.
Yeah,
I think he might have. Because you can see he had this big smile. I don't know if you've seen the image of the big smile on his face.
Yeah, I saw that
as they get into the scrum. Listen, like, here's the thing, and I was saying this last night. I'm not surprised that the guys in Calgary now are complaining about this, saying, it's Bush League this, it's garbage this. Okay, you live in Calgary, right? Like these people, not you specifically, Daniel. I mean, just the people in general. Like you watch Matthew Tkachuk, he is a pest, and he does some things that might not be that are Bush League, that are 100% Bush League. So now it's an issue because it was someone else like that. Listen, during those like 60 or 3 hours, pretty much almost 3 hours, I am a Leafs homer. No question about it. No, I will not deny that when I'm watching that game, I'm Leafs. But when I take myself out of that, I mean, like, listen, I'm still going to have some bias like for the Leafs. Like that discussion we had about who's going to finish first in the Canadian division. I put Toronto, Adam put Montreal. It is what it is. But to now call that Bush League, okay, yeah, it's Bush League. So next time Matthew Tkachuk plays some games, and I'm not even going to address the Jack Campbell incident because I don't know if that's it was an iffy thing. Like, you know, right? Like he was falling. Did he have to fall right on his head? Probably not. Who knows? Like I'm not there. I wasn't there in that situation. I did take physics for 2 years, but I didn't look at the physics of the fall. So whatever. But let's remember who does the most, like a lot of Bush League things in this league before you go and start melding off.
And it really reminds me too of, you know, you take what you kind of dish out, because I think of Brad Marchand on two separate incidents where, you know, he's a guy that's kind of going here and there. He's kind of being that pest that we always know him as. And then you'll see the PK Subban check on him, or you'll see the Ryan Lindgren reaction to him last season where these things kind of happen and then he kind of speaks out in the media. And it's kind of like same run of the mill kind of thing. But the one thing that kind of separated for me was that Matthew Tkachuk reaction on the bench when they were leaving. Like I have never seen that before.
That was so funny. I'm not gonna lie.
That was something where I don't know. Like I know he's a young guy, but he's not a super young guy.
Something set that guy off. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, like we don't know what was spoken on the ice, but it was
probably some not nice things. I'll take a guess.
Like he does play that way. He is the guy that's going to be known for it. But you know, same thing too. Like kudos to the Leafs in a way that I know that people are going to be like, "Oh, Bush League of flipping the puck" kind of thing, but the one thing I kind of take for them is how the team kind of came together. That's kind of something that we've seen from before, where the team has come together, where, you know, you have, like we talked about, you know, that accountability, that leadership kind of thing. And I think, you know, for what has been thrown at them this year, they've really shown it, that they've really kind of said that we didn't want to keep how things were last season, and we got these new guys, and it is a bit of a good mix here where you have those guys trying to prove themselves. You have those veterans who finally feel that, you know, they can play their game. They have those guys who are all emerging, and I think it's just all coming together in a way that these incidents are still going to happen, but you know, I'd rather these things happen than them keep playing it safe.
Yeah, I think, and I think we talked about this last episode too, like the fact that the Leafs have this depth, it's keeping those bottom six guys in check, saying, hey, like you have to keep that game up because, you know, Engvall's sitting on the sidelines. Boyd is sitting on the sidelines. Spezza is sitting on, like whoever's sitting on the sidelines that night who can easily replace you.
Travis Dermott on the sidelines.
Travis Dermott last night, right? So, and it keeps them in check in that way. But another thing, and I think with the additions they made, the team's a little more, I guess, let's say chippy in the way they conduct themselves sometimes. Like it's okay. Like, hey, if someone falls on Freddie, I think I have confidence in this team that someone will go after them. Like if they fall on Freddie, like on purpose. Like the way, I don't remember who it was, but I remember Justin Hall throwing him off. Obviously, he got the 2-minute minor for, I guess, roughing there, which was unfortunate. Maybe he took it a little too far, but at least he did something, because for the last 5 years, or 4 years, I felt like I've been watching this team get manhandled and no one do a single thing about it.
Yeah, and I think one thing I kind of take from that is that you don't have to have two extremes anymore where you've said before that you have these guys like Simmons, you have these guys like Bogosian. These guys could actually be productive on both sides of the ice. That I remember, and this is going to be a bit of a throwback, but I remember when Randy Carlyle comes in. He's like, this team's not tough enough. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to play Corbinian Holzer, Keith Ollie, Fraser McLaren, and Colton Orr all in the same night. And it's great. Like, yeah, you have that toughness, but you're going to also have to have these guys that can help you in the offensive zone. Okay. So, yeah, I know. Sorry, it was a bit of a painful memory there.
I was going to say, why? My first question, why?
I just thought about that because, like, when I remember, for all the bad times there were for those seasons,
a lot of bad times.
Yeah, you'll see, like, Phil Kessel get a cheap check, but you'll see the Leafs respond to it. And that was something that I think about now, that's something that Toronto needs because, and I'm not saying it's from the critics, I'm just saying for how the team plays, you have to really balance out that skill.
You're right. And I feel like every time I talk about this team, I'm always, skill, whatever, like that. I think this chippiness that they have is very important to the next step for this team. But the arguments that I think other people were making is, we need that fourth line goon. No, we don't. Those don't exist. Like, I mean, you'll obviously that Anaheim example, I think it's Delorier, Carter Rowney, and
Derek Grant.
Like, that's a very tough fourth line in terms of like beating the crap out of somebody if they had to. But like, what else are they going to do? Right? Like, those fourth line goons don't necessarily exist in large numbers. And is it more important to have a guy like Wayne Simmons in your lineup who can beat the crap out of somebody if he needs to, and also be somewhat skillful? Or is it better to have a full out brawling fourth line? I think the first one is better for this team.
For sure. I think like they've adapted so well to it. And I guess with the next team we're going to go on without Adam here is the Habs that they've been able to find. Oh, yes, go on.
Before we go to the Habs, I want to shout out one player because he keeps proving me wrong every single time.
All right.
It is Justin Hall. First off, the hair, absolutely fantastic.
It's great. Okay?
That guy has a flow like no tomorrow. But and maybe this goes back to what we were talking about before with the offensive depth. I think the same could be said with the defensive depth. They have, let's say, their top six. Who's waiting outside of the top six? Mikko Lehtonen, who obviously played last night, but Mikko Lehtonen, Rasmus Sandin, and Timothy Liljegren. And then Martin Marincin and
some quality guys there. And
Kalle Rosen, right? So
he's back.
He's back. Yeah. There's guys behind him, and I think it's really pushed Justin Hall because after he got that 3-year contract extension, the rest of the year was very, very bumpy for him. And I want to give him props because I think, I know I gave him a lot of crap. I gave Justin Hall a lot of crap last year. And, the year before he was scratched 71 times. I didn't write an apology, but I want to apologize to Justin Hall because that guy has been an absolute legend.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of people questioned his role in the top four. They're saying that he was overvalued as a right-hand shot, but he's really brought it this year, and that's really reassuring. And hopefully, well, it very kind of looks like it now that that contract people kind of talk about is going to be a bargain.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Any more final thoughts for the Leafs?
No.
All right. So we'll go to a team that, balance out that skill with these boulders here and there on their right side, the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah. They have They've been probably the best team in the league so far. Like, I mean, they have 2 games in hand over Toronto. I mean, they're 2 points behind them, but I mean, like, I think they've been the best team in the league so far.
They've really kind of shown that they can throw whatever they can and get production from any line, and that's been a big difference. I've talked to Adam before about it, where I think the meter for me is like Arteri Lekkonen's not playing, in your top 6 anymore, or
Right.
I was ecstatic when Corey Perry came into the lineup and they get a goal from him. That they've been able to find a lot of these guys that have added the size, but they haven't compromised the same thing Toronto has on that offensive skill set.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with you. And what they've done too, and I think Adam would say the same thing, is they've really filled their depth.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Joel Armia and Paul Byron are now are out, and I think they found ways to fill those roles, like Jake Evans and then Corey Perry, who played. They still have Michael Frolik on the taxi squad, so like they're prepared. They came prepared. They did not come like, this is no joke of a team. And I think we all had this, and in my opinion, like, I had this idea that, Montreal is going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
They added all these pieces, Anderson, Toffoli, Perry, Edmondson, bringing in Romanov from Russia, and obviously Jake Allen. And then Suzuki and Kotkaniemi are a year older and are getting better. Like, they're a really, really damn good team. I don't think people expected them to be this good.
That's the big thing. I kind of feel I myself was not really a skeptic of it. I knew they were going to get better, but like, as the signings kept coming and coming, I was like, okay, they're doing something here. And I guess that big thing, and I'm still really proud that I got to predict it, but Tyler Toffoli,
Yeah.
wow, what a signing he's been for the Habs. What, like, that fit, that when we thought the Vancouver fit was great, like, wait until you see the Montreal fit with Tyler Toffoli, because that has been something that I did not see coming.
Yeah, it was so funny when you got that right, because it's like, no one, like, it was like, even you would admit it was a random. It seemed like a random pick at the time. Like, who would have guessed Tyler Toffoli was going to Montreal? Like, we had an idea they were in on Taylor Hall. We had an idea they were in on Mike Hoffman, but Tyler Toffoli, that name kind of came out of nowhere. I'm making a bold prediction.
Mm-hmm.
I'm making a bold prediction. The division finals will be the Toronto Maple Leafs versus the Montreal Canadiens.
Wow. It's one thing I'm going to
I don't know
about.
if it's that bold, though. I don't know if it's that bold, because I still have them finishing 1 and 2. But it's my bold, because the Leafs never made it past the first round in a while, if you haven't noticed. But it's my bold prediction.
After each game, and we have an episode, how's that going to be on? Like, how
It's
are you and
gonna be
Adam going to
difficult.
be?
I think Adam and I will be fine.
You're going to be fine.
We've been pretty good. We've been pretty good the last 2.5 years. We've been friends, and the Leafs and Habs have played.
Of course. And a big thing too, shout out to Adam right now, but the Habs returned to Montreal.
Yeah, finally. I didn't even realize they weren't playing at home, if I'm being honest.
They were so good on the road. I was like, where's this coming from? Well, we know where it's from, because we actually have to applaud Mark Bergevin now. So, yeah, I think that's going to be a big thing. It's kind of ironic, because Adam is coming back to Toronto as they're going to Montreal. So that's kind of funny. But yeah, like, the Habs, they finally get some home ice.
That'll be nice.
Been on the road for quite some time. They're going to bring back that momentum, and I'm really curious to think, what jersey will Adam wear for the home opener. Yes, for the next episode. I guess, tonight, home opener, or what he's going to bring next time, because I've been seeing that Jonathan Drouin jersey in his videos a lot lately.
Maybe I'll pull something else out. I guess we'll see.
Good. Tyler Toffoli, what we
Oh,
said before, first star, and
we got it. We
what
got to do the shout out though
shout out.
for
All right,
John Gibson coming in third. That guy has been an absolute beast. Like I was looking at his numbers, and for the team he's playing behind it. I don't know how I'm gonna check right now how Anaheim have necessarily fared. Like they're fifth in the division. They're 3-2-2. That's obviously only 7 games. But John Gibson has been a beast.
yeah, it's pretty funny. He has 2 shutouts this year, and they've been both wins of 1-0 because only one person actually scores in those games, and it's always been a random guy. They're finally getting production from a lot of their depth, but again, like I'm not gonna go on this for too long, but John Gibson, he was my Vezina pick. I think that he continues to do it. I think they mentioned that they're gonna try to play Ryan Miller a bit more, so he gets a bit of the rest this time. But I'm just happy with him. And shout out to him for wearing the Kobe Bryant mask yesterday.
Yes.
That was amazing.
Are they playing tonight, Anaheim? Maybe he'll wear that tonight as well.
They played last night.
Did he wear it during the game? Because
yes,
I know
he was like 24-1.
Listen, I think if John Gibson keeps up these numbers and Anaheim makes the playoffs, even if they come in 4th, I think your pick might turn out.
I hope so. Like again, it's pretty funny. It's been actually that 4th line and the youth that have been keeping this team afloat right now. Like we're not getting a lot from Adam Henrique, Ryan Getzlaffer, Jakob Silverberg, but it's an early season. I like what they kind of have. They'll grind to it. If anything has shown in the Mighty Ducks movie, never count out the underdogs. On that note, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, EA Sports.
Yeah. Okay.
Raise Romanov's overall 77.
I know Kirill Kaprizov's already 83 in the game.
Come on, let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it over with here. Let's bump up that rating a little bit. Come on, let's be nice.
Dylan Cousins as well. Like he's still like a 77 in the game.
I think so, somewhere around there.
Maybe World Junior bias there.
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
You don't have World Junior bias, do you?
No, I don't. Never. But anyways, this was fun.
Yeah, it was just the 2 of us.
Yeah, that was great. Hopefully we'll have Adam for next episode. If you like the show, please check us out on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. If you're on Apple, please leave us a review, give us 5 stars. Tell us what you loved, what you'd love to see on the show. I guess for the visual part of this episode, please check out our YouTube. Please check out Alex's blog. Check out Adam's videos, and check me out now on The Eye Opener, confirmed in our last episode by Will Baldwin. So that was pretty fun.
Have you read your first piece?
It is coming out soon.
Good.
Yes. Will, if you're hearing this, the draft is almost done. And thank you again to Voice Ed for being an amazing platform for us. And we are open to suggestions, guys. If you want to see anything on the show, anything we covered, anything that, sparks any more interest, please let us know because we would love to.
Yeah, leave a comment.
Yes. Thanks, guys.